Welcome to the Worth the Fight podcast, where we bring you powerful conversations surrounding the sensible and therapeutic use of psychedelics and plant medicines towards healing trauma. I'll introduce you to guests who, through their own personal journey and transformation, tell the Worth the Fight story. I'm your host, Matt Simpson, author of Worth the Fight, Acting for a Better World, a guide to spirituality, psychedelic medicines, and overcoming trauma. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Tables Have Turned podcast, where your host, Matthew Simpson, me, will be the next gracious guest of the Worth the Fight podcast. A few weeks back, I had the privilege of being a guest on the Ceremony Wellness podcast with Kelli Tennant. For those of you that don't know Kelli, she is a rising star doing incredible work for our human family. Kelli is super thoughtful, warm, and caring. She focuses her energy on bringing high vibe content to the women's holistic health space after many years of struggling with misdiagnoses. I'm very inspired by her bold, edgy, and refreshingly honest content. She dances with our societal taboos with grace. Check out her work. She's been at this for a year and a half now and has a huge inventory of inspired guests and just really inspiring content. She and her partner, Connor, are hosting a Realness retreat in March of 2020, where she will be guiding people to Costa Rica for a visit with Mother Ayahuasca. From someone who's walked through the fire on my own personal healing journey, it is valued above all else and most essential to have a safe and supported container. And I believe that Kelli and Connor will provide just that. They're open, transparent with their work and their messaging and their own personal healing and overcoming. And again, I'd highly recommend anybody looking to jump into this fire and heal in this unconventional manner to check out their Realness retreat. I'll have more info in the show notes about their upcoming retreat hosted at Soltara Healing Center in beautiful Costa Rica. You can find Kelli at Kelli M. Tennant on Instagram. You can find her at kellitennant.com Insta links for more information about the retreat. Without further ado, please enjoy the spirited conversation with Kelli as we talk all things worth the fight and spend much time discussing the collective soul veteran healing mission and the vital work being done at the Heroic Hearts Project. Thank you so much for listening.
So I love the idea of ceremony. You know that. You've listened to my show.
Sure.
I just had my event, Ceremony Wellness Live. It's all about people gathering together and supporting each other, providing a safe space to grow, to heal, to be curious, to ask questions, to feel seen and taken care of. And when you initially reached out to me, that was one of the first things you said. And I love that you are creating this idea of ceremony culture for warriors that are coming back from war and from service. And why is that such an important component for you?
Yeah, this veteran healing soul mission has been something that has really grabbed me and pulled me in. Originally, I jumped into this work because I felt like I had a moral duty and obligation to stand with them and to share. I mean, we have 22 veterans that die by their own hand every single day. That number is likely far greater. That doesn't include the masses that are stuck in self-abuse, drugs, alcohol, opiates. Doesn't include the homeless population. And there was a number that really drew me in. It was that, and we're talking a large sample set, and this was back in 2017 when I jumped on board with Veterans for Entheogenic Therapy. We had upwards of 150 veterans that had been through the program. And 90% of the war veterans, it was the childhood sexual trauma that was at root. You know, they had PTSD post-war, and it's time and time again. It was the sexual trauma from the early years of childhood development that appears to be driving them to war. So I jumped on board with that, and now I'm doing this work because I believe that if we earnestly seek a peaceful planet, that healing the hearts and minds of our war veterans is an absolute must. What I've seen from them has just been astounding. And they're a motivated group, and they know discipline, and they know leadership. And a lot of the issues that I know we're getting heavy to start out here, but a lot of the issues that this cause brings up are really charged. So, and I think that we need to address these things, and we can't keep turning a blind eye, especially when they're dying in droves.
Mm-hmm. Why did you feel so connected to support veterans in this way and really give them a voice?
Well, I had a similar story to you in terms of I was doing the corporate deal in Chicago. I had a really profound experience with ayahuasca, and I figured a way out of the corporate grind and the rat race, and I took a year to untangle myself after my first ayahuasca ceremony, and then I traveled with a backpack for 18 months with the sole intention of finding how I can best be of service for the next second half or the next 50 years of my life. And in month 17 of an 18-month travel journey, be careful what you ask for. It came to me, and I read about this in my book, Worth the Fight. I was rolling around on the floor in Grass Valley at an Airbnb, just trying to deny what I was feeling. And I was like, shit, man, this is your time. It's time to step the fuck up. And,
wow.
And then coming across this veteran work that, it was like, how am I a 38-year-old man and just finding out about this veteran suicide tragedy? How is this cut off from the busy go working world? And this has been my quest since then. So.
That's amazing. I want to go back to something you said about the sexual assault that a lot of these veterans have experienced, that they experience as children, and then that's what's leading them to war. I never thought about making that correlation. I would love for you to explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is something that is Sebastian Junger writes about this in the book Tribe. The war veterans that fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, our modern day wars, 2 times more likely to have experienced childhood sexual trauma in the early years of development than those that were selected at random in Vietnam. So, mind you, I said that those are 2 times more likely to report the sexual trauma. And for anybody that knows anything about sexual shame, this is a really challenging thing to talk about. Mm-hmm. People would rather just check out and die and kill themselves than to utter those words. It's not on me. It wasn't my fault. It was really that energetic release of asking for help. And then again, the work that we see time and time again with the veterans is it's most often it's the early years of childhood development that there was abuse in the home, not always sexual abuse, but broken homes. And it appears that the service time or war or joining the military is a means for them to find tribe and find connection. And they seek that out because they can't find that often. They can't find that in their homes and with their intimate partners. So they go find it in war, and they get it in war. War is tribal and primal, and you're always with the group and your unit. But when they come back home, they don't have the resiliency skills often. They never had the support groups, and we all know how important support is. And, they have these really traumatic memories, and, they have medicines that don't really work, mm-hmm. and they all have guns, and that is just a horrible recipe for our veteran suicide tragedy.
Wow. So much of it is not even necessarily PTSD from war. What I'm hearing, it seems like, is that that's a component, but it's really triggering other things and bringing all this stuff that's been suppressed to the surface. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. The PTSD in post-war is just a symptom of it's almost the needle that breaks the back, or the straw that breaks the camel's back. And it's what forces our veterans to finally get that help and finally address that hurt that has been pushing them or driving them since their early years. Mm. So did you experience those kinds of things in your own life that made that connection even stronger for you? Yeah, that absolutely. Yeah, there was, I had, and I read about this in my book, the childhood sexual trauma that I had, and it's something that one of the central questions of my book is like, well, how at 35 years old, when I have a loving family
very good people and a loving tribe of people, friends and family. How is it at 35 that I could feel love for the first time with a psychedelic medicine? What the heck is up with that? And you know, I didn't serve in the military, but I had my own kind of battle of you know, climbing the corporate ladder, the soulless ladder in Chicago, and you know, really over-identifying with external, you know, material, money, status, all that stuff that wasn't so important once I had that kind of that realization of that there is life without being directed or ran or driven by my trauma. It was a big energetic release and letting go of that hurt and recontextualizing it and just looking at it differently. And that was a really profound thing that or a shift that I attribute to the medicine. You know,
when you sat in ceremony for the first time, was that the first time that you had acknowledged the sexual trauma?
No,
Okay.
I had about 5 or 6 years earlier, I had addressed it with my family, and I had you know, kind of had an intervention of sorts of bringing everybody together. I was just kind of tired of this like fake. We had this great upbringing. I was like, come on, God, you know. So I was just like, I just wanted to be honest, and this is what happened, and this is why I couldn't speak about it until now, because it was just a great deal of shame, and that shame eventually boils over. And as Hemingway says, the world breaks everyone, and there's a tipping point that it tipped, and you know, I think it was at 29, 30 years old, where I was working with a therapist about addressing this and just releasing that energetic charge of holding this by myself and putting that on the shoulders of my family, and because it was our family's burden to share, it wasn't just mine. And that was something that was really a profound experience.
I love that you went to therapy. It's so amazing to be able to just talk to someone about it.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest things, is like we keep all these things inside and we feel like we have no one to talk to. So I think that's a huge first step. But was there a light bulb moment for you where you realized this wasn't my fault and I can talk about this and I don't have to carry the shame?
Trying to think. I don't know. You know, there was a light bulb moment, and I was backed into a corner. You know, I read about this in chapter 2, and I was a shifty, deceptive liar and a cheat with my intimate relations, and it really, you know, I backed myself into a corner where I had no choice but to just be upfront and with real and to finally address this, because I had the awareness that this hurt was driving my behavior, and you know, I had a really challenging time connecting on a deep level with intimate partners, and you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, we go into self-preservation mode, and it's about survival, and so in that, we push people away and we keep this bubble around us so that they can't penetrate that, so that we are safe. And so long we don't realize we're even doing it, and it's just creating more distance and lack of connection, which is actually what the healing is. That's where it lies. But when you're in the middle of it, that's one of the hardest places to be. And so many people that listen to this show have gone through their own stories of sexual assault or being molested as a child or rape. And I think that's something that is so profound about what you're saying, is making that connection of knowing that was affecting so much intimately for you, and being able to take the step and voice that and talk to your family so that you could heal those wounds. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing that.
Yeah. And I think it's just permission to have a voice in those moments. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When it comes to ayahuasca, I'm very passionate about this. Mm-hmm. Connor and I are hosting our retreat at Soltara in Costa Rica next March.
Amazing, with Dan Cleveland.
No, he's not a part of it. Okay. I believe he's on the board.
Okay. I worked the Soltara booth at the 2019 International Ayahuasca Conference in Girona with I manned the booth with representing the Heroic Hearts Project, and Soltara. Heroic Hearts Project has a relationship, and they're sending a lot of war veterans to Soltara right now.
Yes, Dan. So now that you say Dan, now I get it. Okay, so Dan owns Soltara. Yes, you were with Dan. That's who we were doing it with. Connor and Dan are friends.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
So funny. What a small world.
Indeed,
Connor will be so excited. So we have our retreat there. And so we're both very passionate about using it as a healing modality and providing a space where you can, the way I describe it is there's like all these pieces to the puzzle of your life. And sometimes you're not able to put them all together because there's things missing. And so things don't make sense. When you first sat with ayahuasca, did you have an experience where things started to come together and make more sense for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. The first ceremony, and again, I read about this in chapter 5 of my book. It was a really challenging, event, or experience. It was awful. And just really, really pushed and tested me on so many different levels. And, the second experience was a really profound breakthrough. And, I had a really powerful visionary experience where I could finally kind of break through the veil and see things as they were. And, to have the safe space so I could see and go to places that I couldn't, that would be prior to emotionally charged, and to see a way out of the mess that I'd created, and to see a plan for getting out of that. And that was a really, something that I didn't, and I hadn't had that space. I'd had some experiences with psilocybin prior at concerts, kind of in a social manner, and rocking out with my friends. Yeah. But this was something completely different. And, I felt like I really got in touch with my soul for the first time in my life, where, again, I could see forward on what it means to be a human, what it means to live, and why we were here.
Why did you feel called to the medicine?
Like I'd said, I had some successful experiences with psilocybin, and, I'd started meditating. I've always done yoga since my early 20s, and things started accelerating in my life in a really good way. And, I just sold, it was my 35th birthday. I'd sold a business that I'd had for many years. So I finally had the freedom. And 2 months later, it was almost immediately, like the night, October 16th, 2014, my 35th birthday, when I sold my business. I was supposed to be out with the guys, like celebrating and eating huge steaks and drinking wine all night. And I wasn't. I was already on to this path. I was already on to, how can I help other people that are struggling and stuck in the muck that I was in? And 2 months later, I was in Costa Rica, drinking ayahuasca. I had a 7-day period before I was going to be so thoroughly sucked into the corporate rat race with the new company and money and accountability and responsibility. And I had a date. A serendipitous, 3 events, and often people talk about that before their experiences. That there was 3 separate events, and one of them was I was out with this woman, Jessica, who's just got back from Peru, and she had a profound experience with Wachuma, and I didn't, at that point, I was like, I didn't know there was anything stronger than shrooms. I was like, holy shit. I was like, I got back to the house, and I was like, I have to research this. And I was like, whoa, there's something. And I was reading up on the science and the purported facts about the war veterans that were healing and people that were healing from depression and PTSD and addiction. And I just, took a chance and said, hey, this is the 7 days. I didn't really tell anybody. And I just said, fuck it, I'm going to go down and see what's up and see what's up with this medicine. And sure enough, it was a fruitful experience.
Wow. That's amazing. It's so fun for me to hear everyone's first experiences of why they're called to the medicine and then sitting with it. Not like I've done it a million times, but it's just so interesting because I feel like everyone is called in such different ways, yet we all end up needing the same things. And you were talking about the first time you felt really connected to your soul. For me, I've felt like I have been so disconnected from my soul and my body, and I couldn't decipher what was my intuition and what was my ego. And I let all the noise come in and I couldn't even hear myself. And sitting with the medicine allowed me to actually just hear myself, and that I realized I could trust myself and know I already had all the answers within me, and the medicine working with my body just brought all of it to the surface. And I think that's so important. And I'm sure you see this too, is so many people are looking for someone else to heal them. And what the medicine has taught me is that I can heal myself. I am my own healer. Have you experienced that?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. The medicine clearly showed what I needed to do, and the power and the value of a daily practice. Mm-hmm. And I've been on the meditation cushion and in the yoga studio for 2 to 3 hours a day since that first experience.
Wow.
It's just been something that's the key is finding a way to reconnect with. It's not the medicine experience itself. It's how are we reconnecting to it on a daily basis, and how are we living the medicine for other people? That's my viewpoint.
Did you go in with specific intentions?
The first time, yeah. I wanted I wanted a way out of the mess that I was in. I was in a really deep mess, and it was the way of life, the only way that I knew of. So there's no other way to really know outside of your current reality. But I wanted a more honest reality. I wanted a life that was based around love and connection. And so I kind of loosely, I guess, would say that and certainly as I became more accustomed to the medicine, and the power of intention, not just with ceremony, but just with life, like with every single second of the day, is to live intentionally. But yeah, intention's powerful.
Yeah. The first time I sat, I had no intentions other than I surrender. And so I was like, please just show me what I need to see. So it was definitely all over the map, which was amazing. That's exactly how it was supposed to be. And then the second time when I was at Soltara, I went in with clear intentions every night. Intentions are questions that I wanted answers to. And it was so wild to me the way the answers came, because at the end of each night, I would ask 5 different questions and I thought they had nothing to do with one another. And then somehow they were all connected to this same core experience I had in a past life that made me believe these stories about myself. And I was like, how does this happen? It's so profound the way things are so interconnected, and the things that we believe about our behavior or our beliefs or the way we live our lives, we think, oh, that has nothing to do with this and this is different. Actually, it's all connected. And have you had that experience where you realize things that you never realized would have an impact on you are actually the core reasons for why you do what you do?
Wait, say that again.
Does that make sense? It doesn't even make sense in my head. Let me reframe this. For me, I have found that there are things that have happened in this life or in past lives that dictate what I do now, decisions I make, the way I act, that I never knew about or never thought had anything to do with who I am now. When in reality, those are actually the core reasons for why I am the way I am.
Beautiful question.
Yeah.
There was, I would attribute the 13 or 14 years that I spent in corporate America. There was a time after my, first few healing experiences where I was very resentful of my past and was very bitter, and Matt, you wasted all this time, and you want nothing to do with sales. I was, I ran companies, but then realizing, like, years later, I had a really profound moment of clarity. It was like, holy shit, like those experiences have been training me to this moment. That's part of my training of being a messenger in terms of my work and being a writer and getting this work out and sharing my truth and sharing this work with our war veterans. And all that experience, it was all part of every single experience. Was a part of this learning process of preparing me for this work, preparing me for, and that includes the people that I've crossed paths with, because I've crossed some paths with some really, really unique folks, and have had some so often It's funny that my father gave me this as a gift one time, that old movie, The Odd Couple. And it's like, it's kind of been the story of my life, is that I've always had these very odd relationships with people that in terms of different ages or older, male, female, doesn't matter. It's connections that have helped me grow. And there's just so many that it's something that's kind of a funny deal to think about that aspect of why is that the case, and I attribute that, I think, to just the trusting the what's inside, and the growth that comes from diversity and different outlooks and different people, and even when I was stuck in self-abuse, I think from a friend level, I never judged really other people. And and without that, you get, or without judgment, you're going to get some oddballs in your life.
Yeah, you are. How do you show your younger self grace?
Another great question. Forgiveness. Yeah. This is something that, as a kind of motivated hard charger, that is something I have to work on and be very conscious of, is to, not push myself too much, and have compassion for the young Matt, my inner child, or whatever you want to call it. And I do. And I think that the medicine really helped me be at peace with, because I had put so much pressure on myself. Another thing that, Sebastian Junger writes about, he talks about how PTSD makes people, there's a study of, street kids in Burundi, it comes to mind, that PTSD makes people more resilient, but it makes people resilient to a different definition of success. And I was extremely resilient to making money, and it was money and sex. That was all that I thought about. I was good, true capitalist, a good old American boy, but that, the way that I went about it was never going to satiate my heart's longing, and my soul's longing. And
I can't see you as you describe yourself like that. I'm like, I can't see you like that. You're so like calm, and you have this beautiful energy about you, and you're, a little soft spoken. Is that how you were then, and it's just magnified now, or is it very different?
I think I've always been kind of this demeanor, soft spoken. It was never really over the top, obnoxious. I mean, I was a big boozer and drinker, and I guess I would get obnoxious at times, but I think all in all, it was mostly, I've mostly been this chill demeanor. Yeah,
that's cool. I have this way of describing this old version of myself and the new version. And I feel like when I get into these chaotic spaces where I feel like I'm being pulled, half my body, my left arm's being pulled this way and my right arm's being pulled this way. And it's like this old me and this new me, and who am I, and how do I define this, and what is my identity? And I kept wanting to separate the two and fully leave this old version of me behind and become this new version. And some of the best advice I've gotten from a few people recently is that you don't leave the old version behind or cut her off. You actually bring her with you and show her how far she's taken you, and thank her for protecting you. And that we don't need to protect that anymore, but now we get to have fun and play in this free space that we've created together.
That's beautiful.
Oh, right? Because it's almost like by cutting her off, I'm punishing who I was for so long and mad about it and angry, when in reality, it was my own coping mechanisms, my own safety measures, my own way of protecting myself and doing the very best I could with what I had. It doesn't mean that I have to punish that. It just means that I know more now and I've expanded. So I get to bring that part of me with me and allow it to expand and flourish. How do you manage the old identity of who you probably identified with in this version of you, and who you've become over the last few years?
That really resonates. Because I'd heard you on an earlier podcast talk about like the death of the old Kelli, and the way that you worded that was really profound. What you just talked about a moment ago, and I think, you know, I look at who I am now and who I was before, and I think, you know, for the most part, I'm exactly who I was before, with an exception of the self-abuse. And, you know, and well, obviously I'm doing, you know, I have a calling, and I have this work, and I know exactly why I'm here. My why is very clear. And, but who I am is essentially the same. And, but now I live, you know, a path of integrity and challenge myself to, be honest and vulnerable and authentic. And that's my practice now is, you know, and it was originally it was the lack of connection that I think drove me to the medicine. And now this authentic connection is really, that's the game I'm playing now. And it's really challenging, this vulnerability, being upfront and honest, and, but it's super rewarding. But when I look, kind of at an objective way of looking at my life, kind of high level, not much has changed, you know, in terms of, who I am and, you know, how I look. Well, how I look at the world's changed immensely, but I think the essence has stayed the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. You know, I think it's cool to have you here talking about this as well, because I have a majority of female guests on the show, and Connor and I talk about ayahuasca and psilocybin quite a bit, but to have a man come on that has experience with this, I would love your perspective, because I get very woo, and like I went to my soul home and then my past life and the whole thing. And so I think sometimes I miss people, or it's a little much. And I like the way you describe things. So if you were to describe what working with ayahuasca is like and how you connect with it, how would you do that?
You know, it's a powerful medicine that, and I've kind of subscribed to, and I think that this was after the fact, but I'd read in, you know, Tim Ferriss's work that he would recommend every 3 to 6 months going in for 2 ceremonies. I think he said that in, he was laying out his itinerary of what has worked for him. And for me, the first years were really heavy. And the idea of having a weekend ceremony with two ayahuasca ceremonies in a sweat lodge, and then having 6 months to integrate that was kind of my process. And because the integration is something that is, it can get lost on this work, because it's the hard part, and the day-to-day work of bringing this experience into your life. And you know, living a life around love and around these insights and around truth, and living a life intentionally can be really challenging. And it's often easier to just go back and continue to go back to the medicine. And, but then we're not growing. Our soul's not growing. So, you know, for me, it's, that's been my experience. And I had a really profound experience that, you know, was the summer of 2018, and I was writing my book, and it was 6 months after my last ayahuasca experience. And I was, you know, thinking, or it was 3 or 4 months or something like that. And I was thinking, when is my next experience? And, you know, it was just very clear, my intuition, or the mother, or source, or God, whatever you want to call it, that it's never been about the medicine. It's about living the medicine. It's about being the medicine. It's about owning fully your what and why for being here on this physical plane. And, you know, I take maybe a contrarian view, you know, with the idea of, Jason Silva talks about this, and I really like the way he phrases this, of inverse PTSD. We have these profound experiences of healing, and just like the traumatic memories that we're healing from are in our nervous system, these experiences of light and love and And, these experiences of seeing our highest self, they are in our nervous system just the same. And I believe it's our job to live lives where we're extracting that and we're integrating those insights. And it's always there, and it's always there. And it's something that we can connect to, through meditation, yoga, dance, prayer, fasting. Fasting's been absolutely huge for me. Cacao. I read a lot about cacao and that, sacred ceremonial cacao and the raw organic cacao has meant so much to me from, being a man that has had a tough time expressing his feelings. And it's just, I have a cup of that and it's like my heart is blasted open and I get sappy and, I feel this spirit of romance and love and, I get a little talkative sometimes and I maybe send too many, I don't know, but it's all playful. And that's something that I've had to work at.
That's really cool. I've never done a cacao ceremony. I've heard amazing things about it. I need to add it to my list.
It's really special.
Yeah. When you talk about ayahuasca and psilocybin, how different are those experiences for you?
The psilocybin was the ayahuasca was it can be a brutal experience, as you know. It can be a really, really tough, hands in the dirt, just getting broken down and beaten down to a pulp, where psilocybin, the plant spirit or whatever, that intelligence is imparted from that is a lot more gentle and playful and forgiving and less harsh. And, I've experienced that it's not as harsh. Mm-hmm. That's been my take. After my first ayahuasca experience, it was very clear to me that it was the daily meditation and the daily yoga that was needed, but also the value of having and using psilocybin as a tool to heal. I was really inspired by Amber Lyons. She had talked about that and how that helped her with her depression, and I went within, I think I had 6 to 8 therapeutic sessions. I was in a safe space, turned my phone on airplane mode, turned the ayahuasca music on, and approached it like a ceremony. Mm-hmm. And that was really a powerful time. I was trusting the scientific research that had been going on at prestigious universities, and to know that this was something that I just had to do. And it was, again, leaning heavily against my survival impulse. And this was something that I'm so grateful to see the changes that are happening in our drug laws right now, and some of the shifts that are happening with Denver and Oakland. I just had Ryan Munevar, who is spearheading the Decrim California psilocybin on my podcast, the Worth the Fight podcast. And, it's a really exciting time. There's a big campaign in Oregon and California to decriminalize this medicine. So people that are stuck in addiction and PTSD and depression can come forth and heal. I already think that Denver and Oakland ruling just sends massive, massive ripples, to all 4 corners of our planet that says, hey, there's a big city in the US, 2 big cities that don't regard this as a drug, and it's a medicine, and that sends, and I think that those rulings will shift and alter the experiences that people will be having, the new people. I always say that it's not about us. It's not about Kelli. It's not about Matt. It's not about people that are on this path. It's about people that are coming onto this path. Mm-hmm. And, Lord knows we have enough creative challenges in front of us as a people. And these tools are powerful creative agents that can, open up minds and unleash these abundant solutions that we need mm-hmm. as a people.
Yeah, that's part of why we're moving to Denver, to be honest. When that happened, Connor and I kind of looked at each other and were like, we got to go. because there is a sense of being able to create spaces where that's possible, and for people to have access to it where they're not afraid to be using it as a healing modality. And I understand so many people, take mushrooms, go to concerts, and
Sure.
there's a place for that. I'm totally fine with that. But in the intention of healing and having access, that's the biggest thing, because like you mentioned, there are so many studies now coming out about the effects of plant medicine and what it can do for you. Even things like MDMA and how that can help people coming out of really rough situations. Just being able to have access to it, I think is, you're breaking down this barrier to entry that's been there for so long.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's imperative. I mean, we're in the midst of a mental health crisis, especially with our war veterans. And, that there's an opioid crisis. 193 people died of the opioid crisis every single day. And there's a lot of, people that are really questioning the role that Big Pharma has in that. And, if these medicines work and people are getting better and they're healing, then what's the problem with that?
That's the problem, right? So I think, and that's the argument that everyone has, is Big Pharma doesn't want you to heal. So they don't want it widely available to be healing and to cure things, because then that means that there's no role for you to take all of their medications.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, that is a bullshit incorporated limiting belief program that as a society, we're going to have to take an honest look at. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the, I read about this again in Worth the Fight, is like, I'm going to go out and say it. It's like the problem with these medicines is they work and no one makes money.
Yeah.
And, but hopefully, the work that Rick Doblin and MAPS is doing is really, the fact that he's been pushing at this since the mid 80s, and, MDMA assisted therapy is in phase 3 clinical trials with our federal government. And it's likely to be a legal medicine for PTSD in the next year or two. And this is huge because, he's working within the system and shifting the model of, the pill a day model that we've been marketed to. Crazy stat that I came across earlier this year that was wild is that there was a Georgetown professor that one of those little blurbs that you see or memes, or no, it was from a Thrive article on the Thrive, that Big Pharma, for every $20 they spend, 19 of it is on marketing and $1 is on the R&D. So they market the diseases years out before. So I always joke about how I have disease X, and disease X is characteristic by bright eyes, a big smile, compassion, a predisposition for altruism, for helping people out, eating healthy, exercising. And it's kind of scary when we really look at that, where we're at right now with the pharmaceuticals and with people dying in masses, and our veterans, and what kind of people are we if we're going to allow our war veterans to die needlessly when there's these medicines that are available that work. And that's why I'm so excited about the Heroic Hearts Project. And, they're sending war veterans that have treatment resistant PTSD that have been through the VA's program to Soltara and to other retreats in Costa Rica and Peru. And what we're seeing with our veterans is really astounding, the healing that they're doing.
So that's where I wanted to go next is, I'm sure you have a plan in place. So what happens? Someone comes back from war, and then what is the plan for supporting them in alternative medicine and plant medicine?
The plan is, they reach out to the Heroic Hearts Project, and again, they've been through the VA's program for a minimum of 6 months. So they've tried all of the standard therapies. We're only working with the people that are the most challenging cases in terms of PTSD diagnoses. And they have, some integration calls beforehand to make sure that they're in the know with what to expect. And they have some post calls. And largely we're seeing a very proficient group of people that are able to go in for these weekend ceremonies and just get busted open And, they're doing it often with other veterans. So there's that sense of tribe and mission still that they had in war. So they have, battle buddies when they're, and as from somebody who's been on this path, is the value of having these relationships and being able to reach out to people and to say, hey, I'm struggling now. And, to share openly and honestly, and to have those connections that are a way to connect us to this healing experience.
How difficult do you find it getting them to even admit that they need this type of help or even know what it is?
That's a big challenge.
Yeah.
And it's my hope and prayer that my work and these conversations, we're shifting the narrative, and the science that's coming out, every article, every book, every conversation is slowly shifting this narrative to make our war veterans feel more safe coming on this path. And that's a big problem right now that we do have with the suicide tragedy, is an inability for them to be open, honest, and real about hurting. And those, I know from my personal experience, asking for help, those were three of the most challenging words that I've ever said in my life. It's like, I need help. I need it. And from somebody who's always been a hard charger, go, to be vulnerable and to ask for help. I felt that ayahuasca opened that up for me, and that what comes to mind for me is Sex at Dawn, and Chris Ryan, he writes about our equal predisposition to the aggressive type A patriarchal chimpanzee, but we share 98% of the same DNA with them, but we also share 98% of the DNA with the matriarchal, free-loving bonobo, and that lives in a cooperative, collaborative tribes in I believe in Congo. They're far less studied than the aggressive chimpanzee, but that notion of being vulnerable and leaning on our tribe and being open and honest and real, and we can't get help from others if we can't admit that we're hurting.
For people that are listening and maybe they have a family member or are themselves a veteran or maybe someone in service right now, how can they best have these conversations? And what are some things that they can look out for to know, I need to be aware of where this person is and what they're dealing with emotionally and suppressing?
I think that there's enough, when someone's open and honest and real, there's enough programs to help people out with. And I would recommend to people, or I do, when someone, expresses interest, and I never push this on anybody. That idea of there's just so many different ways to heal and find peace. And this is just one that it's worked for me because I needed an aggressive intervention. But when it comes to our war veterans or people that are in a similar spot, I would have them read the book Stealing Fire, written by Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler, and Michael Pollan's book was a pure masterpiece. And the way that both of those books give people all of the necessary and pertinent data points that one would need if considering engaging this path and to see if this medicine path is right for them. Because it's a huge decision, and it's a huge commitment, and it's a lifelong, you're in many respects, you're shifting from the fixed path thinking to growth path. And this climb, and once you're on the growth path, it never stops. It's like we're continually on the climb. And so that's what I would recommend to people that are earnestly looking to heal, people that are struggling. And but I would say that to reach out to your friends and lean on your loved ones. And when you're hurting, and if you're in a tough spot, I think that from personal experience, I've been so even now, it's still challenging sometimes to be open and honest and vulnerable. But I'm always, I always get that real spirit in return. And it's just always, it's always the case. So we make up all these stories about what people will think and whatnot. And when we're real with other people, they're real with us, and that's bonding. And that's, I think a really important aspect of the human condition.
One of the questions that I get so often is, what am I going to see? And is it going to be scary? And I think that you even take plant medicine out of the conversation. Just in life, we're so scared to see the thing that is full of truth, because what does that mean? It's like this unknown. If I don't see the truth or the core wound or the childhood trauma that I've blacked out, I'm safe. But if I bring that to the surface and I see it and I have to deal with it, what does that mean and what happens after? Maybe for you and for people that are going through this work, how do we navigate that experience and be okay with the unknown?
Yeah, the truth and hiding from our truth, that's not a sustainable strategy. And eventually that will bubble up. And I always recommend kind of that being direct and just, and really ayahuasca is that. You're diving right in. That thing that we all hide from, or that thing that we don't want to address, is basically rubbed in your face. But in a safe place where you can, cry the tears and feel the feels and to let go of those emotions that we're holding in our nervous system. And, it's just, I think that approach of being very direct, and just, for me, the whole, and this is something that we're seeing with our war veterans, the whole, just dive right in. If you know that there's something that needs to be addressed, dive in. It's, Jason Silva says, jump and it's, you're going to be greeted with a feather bed. And it's like, we put so much fear and so much, anticipation but those fears end up, running our lives in a lot of respect. And, I don't know if I answered the question. I went a little roundabout.
No, that's beautiful. The last thing I'm just curious about is, for veterans that have gone through plant medicine journeys and experiences, what they're saying afterwards.
They are, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this work. And like I said, originally, I came onto this path and I embarked on this mission because I thought I had a moral duty and obligation. But now it's if we earnestly seek a peaceful planet, healing the hearts and minds of our war veterans is an absolute must. They can teach us everything that we're ignoring as a people. All the lessons are bundled up in this one subgroup of people, and some very provocative questions that we've talked about. Big Pharma's role in our mental health, the mental health struggles, the church. If the research is seemingly showing that it's this unchecked child sex church abuse that is driving war, and then ultimately the whole notion of like, what the heck are we still doing at war? It's 2019. Mm-hmm. Let's get our shit together as a people and let's figure this thing out and find a way to live as a collective global family. And but what we're seeing is with our war veterans that are healing is really profound. Again, they have leadership training. They know discipline. Often they are digging into their own projects, or however which way, they're grabbing a shovel and finding a way to help and contribute. And they're not afraid to raise their hand and to speak the truth about their experiences. And I think that that's what we need. We need people to raise their hands right now and to share their truth and to be open and to be honest and to be vulnerable about their struggles. And that's what we've seen with them. And, as civilians here, when our war veterans raise their hands, we shut up and listen. We just do. They have lessons that we can't even fathom. And they deserve that. And they deserve medicines that work.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for doing this work and for sharing this. I would like to think that I know what's going on, but so much of what you said today was just jaw-dropping for me. And I think for so many people listening to this episode, probably the same, in not understanding how much or how many epidemics are just within veterans and what's going on, and that there are so many clear answers of support that we can offer, and bringing together psychedelics and using that to support them in that journey. So thank you so, so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this incredible work. And it's bold and it's brave and it's really inspiring. And I just really value the spirit that you're putting out into the world. Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's great to connect with you here.
Thank you too, Matt.
Thank you for listening. We had a deep dive with the Veteran Collective Soul Healing Mission. If you are interested in finding out more about this work, please check out Worth the Fight podcast episode number 3, the spirited conversation I had with Jesse Gold, where we dive deep into the work being done at the Heroic Hearts Project and what it potentially means for our fractured and divided nation, healing the hearts and minds of our warriors, our war veterans, those that know honor, integrity, and courage, a love-based solution that we all agree on. To donate or find out more about the Heroic Hearts Project, you can find the Heroic Hearts Project at heroicheartsproject.org. We are in need of inspired volunteers and financial donations to keep pushing this work forward. Jesse is the real deal. He's a retired Army Ranger, fully in touch with the sacred duty and responsibility that the veteran cause has to lead, not only for our war veterans that are in the midst of a mental health crisis, but also for our American people that struggle way too much with mental health and emotional and behavior challenges. A big thank you to Kelli, again, for having me on the Ceremony Wellness podcast. And I can't thank her enough. And again, wowed and proud of the work that she's doing. Please connect with her. And if you're interested about that Realness retreat, you can find more when you find her on Instagram at Kelli M. Tennant or kellitennant.com/instalinks, where there is much more information about the Realness retreat that will be in Costa Rica in March of 2020 at Soltara. Soltara is a ayahuasca healing retreat. Is doing incredible work. I've met Dan Cleland. I represented the Soltara booth at the 2019 International Ayahuasca Conference in Girona, Spain. They are doing great work with the Heroic Hearts Project. Jesse is sending a lot of our warriors there, and we're having just incredible results. So all good things. It's amazing how all these things kind of line up. But if you're interested, yeah, check out Kelli, and you will be in safe hands with Kelli. Much love. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be catching y'all soon.